Welcome, folks. This is going to be another self-experience information insight video. So through my travels, through my walks, through my random ponderings of things of this life, I get random insights, random thought patterns, random ideas that I write down. So I'm going to start recording them all on video format so they may be saved, and possibly a book will be coming out of this, or it might be used as just a video format to bring insights to others. They're down in dot forms, so I'll read them out and then I'll expand on it depending on how many get through each video. I'll try to make it about 20 to 30 minutes, maybe cover about 5 or 6 of these insights going forward. So in the mind, when we have a concept of a home, when we have a concept of where we belong, this is what the average mind does. It seeks for security. It seeks for a certain place of comfort, and that is what we call home. Usually it's where our house is. Usually it's where our culture is. It's usually where the people around us are who we call our community, our like-mindedness, and this is what we call home. Now, another way to see this is to see the concept of an anchor. Once we have a perception that this is my home, then everywhere else ends up being the place that we can consider not our home. Now, this is obviously just the average understanding of life, and we think this is normal, and the brain is used to functioning this way, so there doesn't need to be anything questioned about this. But if we are able to hack our way out of that thought pattern, have a thing called a house, have a thing called a place we belong, but not really operate or see it as a home, then we are able to understand that we can go anywhere on this planet, we can interact with anything of this realm and be as comfortable, be as homely as we would when we are at home. Now, the understanding is when we go back, or the going back in itself is just a narrative, a thought pattern too. But when we go back to this thing that we in our mind we call a home, then we get comfortable, we kick off our shoes, we relax, we're at ease a little because it's used to it. The energies are there, the essence is there, and we can get almost to our true essence, to our true self, show our real colors because we'll feel comfortable there. But when we go outside of that place called a home, then we have to put on a certain mask, put on a certain front. We have to adjust to the things of that place that isn't so familiar to us. And this is the natural events and natural actions and interactions that take place. But if we can see the falsity of this idea of home, which was just built into our minds over time, over perpetual living conditions, perpetual habitual going back and forth, and cementing into our reality that this is the place I see as home and everything else is an outside of that secure environment. That is what the actual invention of a relaxation state, a comfort zone, and a non-comfort zone comes around. Once we can release ourselves, or through inward search, understanding what it is that the being is that starts associating this particular place or this particular nation or this particular location geographically as the home. Once we can find out what that is, then certain level of enlightenment, certain level of awareness comes about that you can see yourself through whatever that concept is. And these are the things that help one get out of their comfort zone, not feel like the world is so small, be able to explore, not have that fear that is always being instilled as we are raised, as we are cultured, as we are nurtured into the state of being that there is a certain area that we must feel comfortable with, a certain area that we have to be associated or adjusted to, and everything else it's a dangerous, not dangerous, but risky, something we must adjust to. And those that are free travelers, those that are ponder, those that you can call hippie or internationalist or borderless livers, those ones are very comfortable in that state of mind. They don't have a place they call home. They're always wandering. It's a little mix in between those. It's not to be completely free. It's not to be, well, what you call free, but it's not completely to be that you are a lone wolf just walking around with no identifiers, no place that you can consider as your originator. It's having that, but also finding out what it is, the being, the I am presence, the avatar or the character that has this strong belief in its mind that this is my home, which is also another word for anchor. And that means we are limited to the scope of vision that we can have, limited to the scope of experience of reality that we are capable of going through, and all these other things. We assume that this anchor is a good thing, somewhere we can have a solid foundation in, and there is some truth to it. However, it does limit you on the higher realms, on the greater view of this world, on what you are capable of accomplishing. Now, there are many people that say that there is only the ever present now, and everything else is part of a narrative. On that note, the very concept of a day is also part of that trap. Now, living in the average life, we consider months, weeks, years. We have the 7-day cycle, which is a calendar that majority of the world operates under. We have the certain separations of daytime, nighttime, and we live through these bases. We go to a job, a career during that time, and then the nighttime is rest time. And then those that have a night shift, they see it the opposite way. But the very idea of a thing called a day, which it does exist, you can have it in a forefront. But when we internalize that and we create these chronological timestamps as days in our mind, we have already become entrapped by that system, entrapped by that narrative which was brought upon into our minds, saying that this is the event that is taking place during the daytime, and therefore we have invented the opposite of that, which is a nighttime, and then that is how the chronological time period of amount of days, amount of weeks, amount of months can come along and tell us how to view this world. This is a slight hack that one can do into the operating or perception of life. Obviously, it exists. Obviously, we have to go amongst the day according to the system, according to the programming that exists throughout this sociological structure. But internally, the I am presence, the being that you are, you can understand, or even the very questioning, the very pondering of the idea brings about a certain level of awareness, certain level of understanding or questioning that can assist in seeing through these things. Most of the stuff, these insights, these ideas, these out of the realm questions, it is not for one to actually know these things. It is not for one to actually have it firmly within their mindset as a truth, but the very act of pondering upon these things does help one remove a lot of blockage, a lot of programming, and a lot of states of being that one never questions. They just assume that this is the fact, this is the norm, this is the nature of it, without actually ever wondering, is there more truth behind the scenes than what is being let on? Most of us worship God, worship greater things, but this is particularly to those that are in the what you would call religious spiritual field that have the worship of God. Now, there is a separation, there is false idols, there is one abundant creator of all life forms, and that is, either call it God, which is a spell word in itself, the English term for the Almighty Creator. Then there's Source, then there's Creator, there's all these other things, which unfortunately most people worship the idea based on the language spell word rather than the actual essence, the actual truth of the matter. But the concept that there is a creator, there is a creator, there is a thing that has invented, that has created these things beyond the average mind, the human mind's capability of understanding. And that is why, from time to time, throughout human lineage, written down on books, written down on scripture, that there are things that come of God, the essence, the flavor, the perfume of God. If the flower is God, then the scent, the perfume that comes from it could be considered the things of God, the perfume of God. And that is what humans really intake. True, they have 5 senses, they're able to perceive from different angles, but when it comes to the things either of Jesus Christ, which is the main role of this, or these other deities, depending on what your religious background is, what your belief system is, what your concept are, what you are perceiving, what you are worshiping is not God in itself, because the very magnificence, the power, the authority, the true force of the thing called God, or what we describe as God, can never actually be perceived by mind of a human being who has gone through so much programming, who is could be called fallen, who is detached itself from source, and even those that do very good inward search, the spiritual increasing, the kundalini rising, the third eye opening, all those things can give you an essence of it, can give you the perfume of it, but you never actually truly know God. That is why internally, inwardly, as we're worshiping, as one would think that we must do for this thing called God as a worship concept, when we're worshiping it, we must never fall for the trap of worshiping the things of God, but only God itself. We can attest to it, we can have a relationship with it, we can try to get close to the things of the perfume so that they guide us towards this thing called God. So it gives us an idea of it, it gives us a concept that the human mind can comprehend, but in reality, the true power, the true beauty, the true essence of God can never truly be seen. And these stories have been written, myths have been around that tell human minds that God has never shown himself to mankind. Rather, they have sent Jesus Christ in order to know a human form, a human understanding of what God truly is. Those that aren't believers or the seeing the truth of what Jesus Christ is, what the story, what the essence, because most people worship stories, not a real, true personal relationship. Even the other things that we worship and we consider it God or majestic, it is almost a deviancy, it's almost a throwaway case about who we're actually worshiping. Because if you truly are a God and you are having certain creations, would you not see it as a certain cutback or a pushback when the things you've created do not worship you, not in a humbling, bow down, you serve me, slaves type of worship, but a loving, compassionate, looking up to sense, but rather they start worshiping other things, which are just the creations, which are just the flavorings of it, or the perfumes of it, and you always send them a certain identifier, a certain notion to give them the insight that, hey, you should be listening to me, or you should be worshiping me, not the fragrance of the things that I have sent for you. Most human beings in their mind, they have a character about themselves, they have an idea, they have a narrative that they play based on the entire human history, the human character that they've ever built about themselves throughout their experience, their childhood, all the little ups and downs of life, and they assume that there's a certain character that they are, which is not true, but it's just a typical mask or the ego that we play out. Now, this character is not the same for the other people that meet that individual. The other people that meet that individual have their own certain character about them, because that is how most average interactions take place. It is amongst the characters of humanity rather than the true essence and beings of humanity, because since majority of us are associated with that character that we have about ourselves, we assume that the character that we are seeing with the other individual that we're meeting must be the true essence of themselves. But those that go inward, search the truth, understand the bigger picture of things, those individuals understand that the character is not them, it is just the casual off measures or off put character that gets invented by certain interactions, by certain experiences, by certain societal norms and nature and behavior habits. But the true essence of what is I am is inwardly. It is not a character, it is not a nature, it is not a skin color, it is not a race, but it's a true energy field that is operating. Once one starts associating themselves on a daily basis as the anchor, as the source in which you see the life through, as that I am presence, as that source, as that being, then you know anytime you meet another human being that that is truly who they are as well. Now, obviously, most human beings haven't done any inward search, have not actually figured out what they are, their true essence. They're just trapped in what you would call the daily living of the human life, and they assume this character that they play, and they have such a strong attachment to it, they have a strong grasp on it, and they believe this character, this story they tell themselves about themselves, is the same story that everyone else has as well. But that is not the case. everyone has their own little small quirks here and there based on the meetings that they've had with people, based on the interaction, based on the energy that they felt about these people that they've met. And in that way, when we assume that the character we are is so important, then everything becomes about that character, especially in this day and age where imagery, social media has pushed us to become very vain, if that's a word we can use, or very materialistic, very egotistical. It is all about what do people think about us, what is this character being viewed as to other people, and not ever the true essence do we care about. It's just that image that we've invented for ourselves, which is all pretty much what it is an invention, a false reality. And it can be dispersed as quickly as right now when you realize that entire character is not the actual individual listening to this words coming out of this electronic device. The thing that's listening, the thing that's understanding, the things that are taking this in is a being, is an entity, but that entity has no association, no formality, no connection to that character, that image, that avatar that subtly lays there in the side of the brain, and the being gives it so much accordance, so much value because we assume that is who we are, that energy exists for so very long that we forget to look past it and look at our true selves. And usually that character is what pops up when you return into your habitual modes. So if you have a home, if you have an environment, every time you enter that home environment, you tap back into that casual acting. You feel comfortable, you have a certain level of openness in that situation, it pops up and it starts interacting. You go to work, you have a certain set of routines, you have a certain set of concepts, you have a certain way you interact with certain people, that character pops back up, and it's that character that starts interacting with people rather than the true essence of the I am. Now, obviously, in society and in common Western society, even Eastern society nowadays, one cannot quickly change their habit, one cannot quickly change their demeanor, even after they've seen past or seen through this false character, because then the society around them, those that have built their own idea, those that have built their own image of this character that they meet, is acting so differently, is acting so separate from what they used to act like. They are taken aback, they don't know how to deal with it, so then they give that negative vibes, negative connotations, and then the being that has made that magnificent change, magnificent transformation, or realizes that they've seen past their own character and this is their true being, their true truthfulness speaking up, that being then gets a little shunned because it's shy, it doesn't know how to react. This is a new being that's been born, and that gives it a little need to become a hermit or need to pull away from the world, but that is not how she should react. Once we understand that we've seen past our character, that shaming tactic doesn't work, that, oh, you're acting weird, oh, you're doing this. We realize that the person that's saying that is talking about a character, and it's not even you that they're talking about, it's the character in their mind who they thought they knew, and then now they see a new picture show up, and that picture doesn't correlate to them with the old picture, so they assume that there's something wrong. But in reality, it's only the character in their mind they're disagreeing with. But when you, as a being, understand yourself, when you know the true essence, your true light, it doesn't affect you in any way because you know what you truly are and you're comfortable with it. And you don't have a role that you're playing, you don't have a character that you're playing. So when these words are used, when these negative discouragements arise due to the changing of your behavior, you are not forced to change back to what you would consider your old self because you know your old self never really existed. It was just a character that was being played out, and the true self was always there, silently observing, silently understanding, but never having a reason to speak up, never having a reason to peek its head out. But now, when you look into it, when you ponder into it, it suddenly awakens because it's happy that it's being paid attention to. We as a society, most of us have been cut off due to this character interactions. There's no true relationships between human beings anymore. We interact with our characters, we interact with what we call these segmented ideas of either coworkers, family, lover, boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, child. That character description pops up, then there's a preordained concept of comfortability, concept of there is a preordained relationship there, this is how things should go, rather than an actual true interaction between two beings. And that is why that character that we tell ourselves that we are must be changed, must be altered, must be seen through so that true interactions, and then that void disappears. Most of us are very lonely. Most of us do not have that essence of that fullness, of that feeding, of that hunger, because we are so emptied, and human nature is to have people amongst us who can talk with us, who can create energy, who have compassion. And since we do not have that, we always feel empty inside. We do not have any true connection to the things of this life. And human beings, if we see species on species, must have interactions with each other on that true self so we can feed each other, because that is what life is about: companionship, knowing one another, growing, nurturing. But since we're so trapped in our characters, it is the characters that are meeting, so it is very shallow interactions. That is why there's such great void, there's such great depression, there's uncertainty, loneliness, and then we feed all of that negative void filling with all this other stuff, like lust, like food, like entertainment, like drama, like all these random narratives that we tell in our mind that is necessary so that we can go about our days. Now we talk finally, this will be the last one, about authority. Most individuals in this current system, current society, current makeup, we recognize authority based on structure, and authority based on narrative. What I mean by that is politicians, religious leaders, uniformed officers, or those that have been held up by society or held up by the casual ordinance of this society. They have been given this false idea that this is what authority is. These are the power structures. These are the ones that are the true intellectuals. So what they say must have value to it. And because we've been led into this type of authority believing, we do not actually sense the authority coming off the individual for who they are. We see them based on their characters: doctor, politicians, presidents, kings, queens, religious leaders, clergymen, clerk, police officer, band camp leader. These are the false ideas of authority. Teacher. These are all the little structures that have been built up as authority status. We start off as children believing them, and as we get older and older, these authority figures become more segmented into our minds. We start worshiping them, we start accepting them, and we don't question them. And especially in nowadays current society, you can see where that's taking us with all of the pushing of climate change, and these are the ones in the know. These scientists are telling us, even though they've been telling us for years and years and years. So in that sense, when we believe this narrative-based authority, we are incapable of seeing the real being authority, and that truly does exist. Those that have found themselves, those that have done the inward search, those that would not say they have book knowledge, but they have awareness, they have understanding, they have the perceived knowledge and awareness of greater things that are not just for the books and crooks and cranks of this society that keep it running. Obviously, there does need to be a certain level, if in the current day and age, of authority that exists for that level of living, for that concept. But when you look past that and you meet a human being, are you able to see past the character? Are you able to see past the false authority that might exist based on their name, based on their title, based on their past experience? And are you able to actually sense the true being, the true authority or lack of authority that that individual might exist? Obviously, throughout society, there have been many false idols that have been propped up. There have been fake actors that have been put into positions of authority. And if human beings had that sense in them to be aware of how to spot authority, or how to spot a being that truly has power, that truly has a certain wind behind his back, a certain understanding, a certain firm belief into this thing called reality, once you can recognize that inside a human being, most likely you will not be deceived, because usually the majority of massive carnage, massive negativity that has ever happened on this planet is because a certain level of authority has been projected and believed and accepted by the masses, and then these masses go about doing what this authority tells them or asks them to do. It is the biggest trap, and unfortunately it has been going on for years and years and years throughout human history, and we must come to a time where we're so aware, so cognitively understanding of the situation, that we do not fall for the false authority of things, but we recognize it in the true essence of it and its true connection to source, connection to God, connection to truth, and not from human man-made authority narratives. I hope you enjoyed this segment of sharing of my insights, sharing of my thoughts. You are welcome to use it in any way as long as it brings light and positivity to your fellow man. I will hopefully be putting this in book format eventually and writing quite a few things that might bring about a greater future for our human race. You can help support my page, support my book at either GoFundMe or Patreon, which I will leave the link below. It will be very greatly appreciated. As you know, sometimes those that do their own inward search have a very hard time dealing with the structures of society, dealing with income during that inward search because it's hard to balance those two. And you will go towards, or you'll be helping towards, a greater concept, a greater light. It is not necessary. Hopefully, God, source, creation, life, if it is meant to be, will bring it about fruition. But speaking on it, bringing the good in. Oh, there is the butterfly that flew by me. How interesting. But it will be brought forth. But any sort of help will be greatly appreciated. Thank you and enjoy your day.